Three and out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you were with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. So much to get to here on the show, including Drew DeArmond, ESPN The Zone in Huntsville, Alabama Tiger Insider. We'll talk some Alabama football with him. Also, Jared Binko, Georgia Southern Athletic Director, will join us, and we'll talk about, obviously, the 12-team playoff format that's recently come to light. Also, the name, image, likeness stuff set to go in effect in this state in about a week and a half or so. And, of course, look ahead to the 2021 season, in which they will have full capacity there at Paulson Stadium. So look forward to Jared Binko joining us around 4:45 here on 3 and Out this afternoon. We'll do a little Name That Team on the show as well. So plenty to get to here on this Tuesday, fellas, as we start last night. We'll have Hawks. We will see the Hawks and 76ers coming up tonight for Game 5. But last night we saw the Braves do what the Braves do, which is do just enough to come back and then do just enough to lose the ball game. And we mentioned yesterday, Alex Anthopoulos saying, hey, Huascar Ynoa, Travis d'Arnaud, Mike Soroka could be back in August. Is that all the optimism you can cling to at this point if you're a Braves fan?
Well, look, last night, to your point, was another example of get down early, come back, either get close or tie it, and then you give it up again. And Chris Martin out of the bullpen has not had a good couple of weeks. And I know for large stretches of this season, he right there with Luke Jackson has been your best bullpen option. And now he's really struggling with an ERA up near 5. So I think the frustrations are clear. I think the issues with your starting rotation and the bullpen are obvious, but I do think this is a talented team. We were talking about it in the show meeting, an important couple of weeks. You need to win tonight. You got Ian Anderson on the mound. You have St. Louis coming up soon. I think a few weeks ago that looked a little tougher on paper. I know St. Louis has been struggling some. So you're getting to that point where it's maybe uh-oh time when you look at the standings, but you still have a lot of games with the Mets left. You still have, again, a talented roster, and I do think getting guys back healthy will help. I would expect Huascar Ynoa to be a turn in terms of his health. I think when he first got injured and hurt his hand, it was, okay, he'll be out maybe a couple of months, not necessarily the duration of the entire season. I'm just being honest. I don't know what you guys think. The Mike Soroka stuff is hard for me to process just because there's been so much change with his health, right? I mean, it wasn't that long ago back in spring where we thought, hey, maybe a couple of weeks into the season, we're going to have Mike Soroka. And then you started to hear the whispers, it's not looking good. He had some uncomfortability. Maybe he's going to be out all year. So for me, with Mike Soroka, I'm going to have to kind of see it to believe it. But with Ynoa, who was great. I mean, Ynoa prior to injury was probably set to be an all-star. I think getting him back, that's a realistic expectation, and that would be a big boost.
Yeah, but getting a big boost of what? It's a lot of games played between now and August. I mean, what type of team are they coming back to? Yes, you would love to have Soroka and d'Arnaud, Huascar Ynoa back. I mean, those are key additions to a ball club that needs a spark, not named Ronald Acuna Jr. But that's when you know how bad it's gotten. I mean, Kevin, we always talk about this. I mean, this Braves team, they can. If the Braves are down early, they can come back late. But can they keep the win? If they up early, can they sustain it? It's like this bullpen is one of those things to where you're gonna have to deal with them every night. Yeah, whatever starter you may have, I think you have to deal with, whatever type of production they give you. With them, it's all about those strikes. Don't walk guys. Make it to the 6th with a fighting chance. Well, sometimes you do that, and sometimes you don't. But the mere fact that you're one guy, and then when you talk about this bullpen, this always seems to be the thorn in the Braves' side. Even when you get those guys back, you still got to deal with the bullpen. So Mike Soroka's coming back. d'Arnaud's coming back. Huascar Ynoa's coming back. Who's coming back to the bullpen? They are already here. I just think that when you look at what this Braves team have the ability to do, yes, I've seen the Braves score 7 runs in 1 inning and lose the game. I've seen the Braves find a way to ink out a big-time win against the Dodgers. But I don't think one team has anything to do with the next team, because the bullpen is what we're going to be talking about when August comes or before it comes, and if they make it to October or what may have you. I just think that, Kevin, at this point, Alex Anthopoulos is saying to himself, well, I thought I did what I needed to do to bolster this bullpen. These guys just outside of Luke Jackson, nobody's really playing well. Have you ever seen a bullpen play this bad, this consistently?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was around in the horrible days of the Braves back in the 80s. But no, look, this is I continue to go back to, I think the Braves have been a team that have caught a lot of good luck during this run under Brian Snitker. And that's part of sports. Again, you could say, I don't believe in luck. I believe in results and how okay, I get all that. But in baseball, sometimes the ball bounces your way. I mean, look at Freddie Freeman. The number of hard hit balls that he's had this year that are not hits are amazing. But that does nothing for getting on base, helping the team continue to win. This team has been one of the best in close and late situations. They're the worst now, or next to last in some of those categories. Going into last night, this team, again, close and late, one of the best in baseball the last 3 years. Last 9 games, they were 0-9 in games tied after the 7th inning. So if you're tied late in baseball, that should tell you got a 50-50 shot of winning, right? Tied late, Braves are 0-9, up, make it 0-10. Like, that math doesn't even make sense. BJ, I know you're a fan of, like, the regression to the mean. 0-10 when you're tied after the 7th inning. You think you would just sheerly dumb luck your way into 2. And it kind of tells you all you need to know about how the Braves season is going. Injuries, Tucker Davidson looks good, goes out with forearm tightness. Bullpen has been a disaster for most of the season. You had to wait to get Shane Green a month and a half into the season. You lost Travis d'Arnaud for most of the season. You don't have Mike Soroka. You've lost starting pitchers again here this season due to injury. You lost Max Fried for a little bit. You didn't. Your center fielder, who was your top-rated prospect, has not panned out. Matter of fact, not even on the roster right now at the major league level. One of your former MVPs you had on the roster. A big reason you went to the World Series or came close to going to the World Series last year. Hurt, arrested, probably not coming back. I mean, these are huge, huge things that is easy to say, well, every team does that. And part of that is true. But also, when it happens to a lot of teams, they also struggle. So to me, some of this is making a little bit of sense as to why the Braves aren't where people thought they would be. And some of it is just, I think you're seeing the fortunate bounces that the Braves have gotten in years past all of a sudden not happen. And quite frankly, as a spoiled fan base the last couple of years, you don't know how to deal with it because you have not seen a team that has to go out and grind every time. It's just, oh, they'll find a way. Well, now they're not finding a way because, again, 0-10, when you're tied after the 7th inning, not once have you won one. So you're 3-3 going to the 8th. Nope, not winning one of those. I mean, it's just that's hard to fathom. So to me, it's just you're not getting any fortunate play by. I mean, again, I would bet right now, and because BJ, you have said it. A lot of people say, look, Luke Jackson is your best reliever. Put him out there to close. I would be willing to almost guarantee he's going to blow it. Why? Because that's how it goes right now. Hey, we're going to put our most consistent guy out there when it matters most. Ain't going to happen. Not going to happen. AJ Minter, oh man, AJ Minter really starting to pitch well. We'll give him a shot in the 8th inning. Gone downhill. It's like anytime you have tried to ride the momentum, it has backfired in a big, big way.
Yeah, and the numbers you reference about the recent struggles in close games, I mean, you would have to think that some of that is going to bounce back in your direction that, like you said, just off of sheer luck, you win a game or two. And, I go back to a couple of days ago against Philadelphia. You're up 2 runs in the bottom, and all you need to do is get 3 outs. You can't even get 1 out. And that was with Chris Martin coming in to shut it down. And he had been probably outside of Luke Jackson, your best pitcher out of the pen. And now he's had a couple of bad outings in a row. Is momentum something? Because I know we normally talk about momentum from a positive standpoint, right? But when you look at the bullpen specifically, because it's an interesting point, Kevin. Minter, he's good. Up, nope. Shane Green, we're getting him. Doesn't go well. Chris Martin, he's awesome. No. Will Smith's back. Not really. Is this something where for guys in the bullpen you just start overthinking it? I mean, because it's not just one guy, like you said. And I know a lot of people have been critical of Brian Snitker, but he has the guys who he has in the bullpen. And Luke Jackson has been really good, but I know fans are even frustrated with his walks and inefficiency. I just don't know who you kind of go to. And I wonder if guys are just kind of overthinking it, or if the bullpen has kind of created this atmosphere where there are so many negatives. It just is what it is. I mean, you feel like you're going to blow it.
Well, what are sports? Sports is a confidence game. Every level of sports, any sport out there, it's a confidence game. And if you're the Braves and it's, oh man, he blew it last night. Oh man, and now this guy did it. Oh, and now this guy did it. And now we can't score any runs. And now we're making errors. I think, look, do you think the things that you as a fan think haven't at least gone through the minds of the guys in that clubhouse? Like, oh God, whose turn is it to blow it tonight? Of course it is. And probably someone would say, please, dear God, don't let it be me when we go out there. So I think a lot of it is just when things start going bad, you need that spark to turn it around. And it's a confidence game. And right now, I don't think a lot of guys not named Ronald Acuna and some other guys have a lot of confidence in what's going on out there in between the lines.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head, Kevin. I mean, when you start thinking about baseball, you start thinking about sports. When you start thinking about any career, like you look at anybody that's successful in their career, no matter what it is, I hope they have confidence. And the thing is, when you start talking about pitchers, relievers, guys coming out that bullpen, we keep on saying, BJ, what is going on? Like Kevin just said, everybody talks about, I want the ball in my hands. Well, that's what you say when everything's going good and you're doing interviews for 30 for 30. Because you want to make the interview compelling. But when nobody, because this is the thing, okay, just say somebody comes out, just say Luke Jackson comes out and gives you 2 solid innings. They got to go to somebody else, right? Because you're not going to just wear him out. Then what happened? Because unfortunately, with the bullpen, we're like a group of men. It's not just one of us. I mean, what's his name? What's the great reliever for the Yankees? Mariano.
Yeah.
I did an event. I'm sorry. I went to a graduation that he was speaking at, and people kept asking. Go back to that dugout and look at Alex A-Rod's guys. I think that kind of stuff to it, but it's bigger than just throwing strikes. It's bigger than just getting out. No, you got to get all of them out, not just 8 out. You got to get them all out to get that dub. And I know, Kevin, you said the hardest outs of baseball are the last 3. Well, you got to make it to that. So I just think when you think about this bullpen, you kind of you wish it wasn't happening to them, but you kind of have it that it's happening collectively because all of them got to find a way to get it done at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of, and again, usually on teams, especially ones that are like the Braves, you don't find it too often where just everybody's struggling, or largely everybody. Usually, hey, a guy or two here or there is not playing particularly well, and somebody else picks up the slack. Well, there's at least in the bullpen, there's not a lot of picking up the slack, and I think even in the starting pitching, sometimes maybe they're overdoing it a little bit, and you haven't seen a lot of consistency out of those guys. Even Max Fried, as much as we thought he was ready to be the ace, has not had a lot of bouts of consistency out there on the mound. So I think that's what they're fighting a little bit as well. We got so much more to get to with the Braves, with Major League Baseball cracking down on foreign substances. We're a little bit over here, so we're not going to have time to get to it, but we'll get to that coming up later in the show as well. We'll talk to Drew DeArmond coming up in just a little bit. ESPN The Zone, Huntsville, Alabama, Tider Online or TiderInsider.com. We'll talk about Alabama and a little Alabama football here as well. But when we come back, could we be on the brink of some potential history in the making in the NBA? We'll get to that and more. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Also live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube and ESPNCoastal.com. You can see us each and every day there. Comment on one of those social media platforms on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We'll hear from Drew DeArmond, ESPN The Zone in Huntsville. We'll talk some Tide football coming up in just a little bit. But might we be on the cusp of a little history in the NBA, BJ and Ben? I don't mean the Hawks potentially moving into a conference finals if they can beat the 76ers a couple more times. And game 5 will be tonight in that series. But with the recent rash of openings in the NBA, a couple of names have prominently been mentioned as potential replacements, that being Teresa Weatherspoon and Becky Hammon for potential head coaching jobs in the NBA. And could that come to fruition? We got some audio from Teresa Weatherspoon, and we'll react to that here after this.
But this is what happened to me. And I go home and I share this with my family. My family said to me, you can become whatever you desire to become. Know your value. I get a chance to play on the 1988 Olympic team. Now, I've been told as an 8th grader, I would never be great playing this game. I get a chance to play on the 1988 Olympic team. And then I'm playing. We're in Seoul, South Korea. I'll never forget it. Seoul, South Korea. And we get back. We win the gold medal. And I'm on the stand. I'm like, oh, God, I'm the youngest. I'm like, whoo, this is awesome. But everybody else is crying. I'm on the stand. I'm like, yes. I'm getting the medal. I get the medal. We get home. I said, Ma, I know I told you everything that I do in this game, that it is yours. But I need this medal for 1 second. I need this for 1 second, Ma. Remember, I'm from a place of 882 people. I don't need a car. I don't need a bicycle, nothing to get to your house. The house is right there. I can touch it. We're so close. So I get home. My mom said, where you going? This is after midnight. She said, where you going? I said, I'll be right back. I want a full-out sprint, you guys. You hear me right now. I want a full-out sprint. I get to this house. I'm like, boom, 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 boom. It's midnight. So nobody opens the door. I hit it again. So you know how you duck down and you look up under the door and see if the light's going to come on? Hey, I saw the lights come on. I said, okay, they're coming to the door. Come to the door. That coach that told me as an 8th grade I would never be great. I took that medal off my neck. He opened up the door. I said, bang! Only 12 of the best in the world get this. Only 12. So why did I share that with you? It's because understanding who you are, understanding your value, understanding your worth is so important. You cannot allow one person to tell you who you are and what you cannot become. If you do, you allow them to create your destiny. You can't do that. You can't. It's impossible. Know who you are and get the last laugh. I did.
So there's Teresa Weatherspoon sharing kind of her story there as well. Currently a assistant coach on the Pelicans, who fired their head coach today, by the way. And a lot of people think maybe she will be in line for that job. But it seems to be, BJ and Ben, that whether it's her or Becky Hammon, one of them seems to be at least poised to potentially be the first female coach in the NBA, or head coach, I should say. They've already been in the NBA on the bench, head coach of the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. And it needs to happen. And powerful audio there, inspiring audio, what conviction and passion and confidence. And you're talking about an incredible basketball player, an incredible basketball mind, knows the game, loves the game, has competed at the highest level, obviously has had a major impact as an assistant coach, was reading some stories about, the impact she's made on players and just the respect that guys on the roster, guys around the league have for her, have for Coach Hammon. These are people who are elite basketball minds, know the game, can teach the game, can instruct the game, can relate, can develop talent, can obviously do what anybody can, and have great skill sets and have earned the opportunity, earned the right to be a head coach. And you've seen the growth of opportunities with assistant coaches, and that's been great. It's time for this. And you think about Teresa Weatherspoon, you think about Becky Hammon. They've earned these opportunities, and rooting for those women.
If you don't want to play for a coach like Teresa Weatherspoon, you don't like playing sports. I know often at times we always talking about the first. You look at what the NFL is doing by having women coaches. I think that like for Arizona and Tampa Bay and watching the football team. Becky Hammon has been on the bench with Greg Popovich so long that I just be forgetting, like that she is a woman. I just look past it, even though I know they're doing it for bigger reasons. We always talk about the color barrier. We never talk about that gender barrier. Well, to become the first woman head coach in the National Basketball Association would be huge because, number one, it's showing that you being respected for your X and O. It shouldn't matter the gender. It shouldn't matter. And when you start listening to Teresa Weatherspoon, when she was saying, when she put it in the context, only 12 people get one of these. Only 12. So when we start talking about your resume, I mean, she was on the Olympic team. How many guys in the NBA gonna even get invited to try out for the Olympic team? You look at guys, young guys like Zion, who needs somebody who's not impressed by who he is. So look, Zion, I want you to be the best you can be. I'm not gonna let your star power supersede your play because he is a big time talent. So Becky Hammon has been. I mean, if Greg Popovich say you can coach, you can coach. I don't care who it is. Greg Popovich, one of the most respected coaches in sports. So yeah, Kevin and BJ, when I listen to Teresa Weatherspoon, I mean, I like the enthusiasm. I mean, number one, banging on somebody's door at 12 o'clock at night. I mean, you know, that excitement was just there. But it's a reason why she coaches in the NBA and not the WNBA. And she ain't, and I'm pretty sure she respects the WNBA. She said, look, I want to coach the NBA. I know X and O's. I mean, a box out is a box out. A rebound is a rebound. Go to YouTube if you do not know what a rebound is. There's a young man who will tell you how to get a rebound. But what I respect about it is what she said about your value. I'm not gonna let nobody tell me what I have to do because I'm a woman. I'm not gonna let nobody tell me that my game is less than because I'm a woman. No, I'm gonna go out there and coach. And I got an opportunity with the Pelican staff, Becky Hammon, obviously with the Spurs staff. So I'm rooting for them because once the first comes, then you know the floodgates open. Oh, okay, they can do this. Well, yeah. I mean, it's not as if every male that's a head basketball coach is a good one. They just there. All of them are not good. They just get that opportunity because of their gender. So we gonna talk about being able to kill these gender barriers, or it's just gonna be lip service. I'm rooting for both of them. If you can't get up to play for a coach like Teresa Weatherspoon, I can only imagine how practice is. If I was her, I would wear that gold medal every day in practice, just flashing at them young boys, like, get you one of these for you put your chest out at me. But Becky Hammon, Teresa Weatherspoon, and every woman out there that wants to coach, you know, in the NFL and the NBA, hey man, we rooting for you over here.
And again, we'll see what happens. Obviously, some of these jobs just came open today, but a lot of talk around the NBA that both of them will be up for some of these openings around the NBA. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. Drew DeArmond going to join us from Tider Insider when we return. We'll look at Alabama. Could they actually continue to live up to the hype? I mean, you lost all these dudes to the NFL. You have a 5-star quarterback coming back. Is it as simple as championship or bust again for Alabama? We'll talk with Drew DeArmond when we come back here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you were with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network as we work our way through the college football offseason. Certainly a lot of eyes going to be thrown towards the Alabama Crimson Tide, as they always are here in the college football world. And joining us here from ESPN The Zone, Huntsville, Alabama, and TiderInsider.com, Drew DeArmond joins us here on 3 and Out. Drew, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, guys. How you doing today?
Hey, we're doing fantastic. Obviously, Alabama lost a whole bunch of guys to the NFL draft, and people just expect, hey, they're going to step in and reload. How is that possible? I mean, we saw just the effects of LSU losing so many guys to the National Football League after their historic run. How do we just expect Alabama to just continuously do it each and every year?
Well, I mean, I just think it's the way Nick Saban recruits and the way he develops. I think he's the best in the business, the best I've ever seen at being able to, first of all, adjust his coaching staff. He's never come back with the same staff every year in Tuscaloosa, starting in 2007. They've had different ideas, different blood come into the staff because, he's had guys move up to the NFL or move on to coordinator jobs or head coaching jobs. So you never expect the staff to come back intact, and certainly that's the case here. I mean, they've only got one coach left from that offensive staff that was as good as I think we've seen in college football last year. And that's saying a lot considering what 2019 LSU did. But he's brought in a couple of former NFL head coaches and Bill O'Brien and, of course, Doug Marrone. And they're going to be on the offensive side of the ball. And then he had to bring in a late addition, Drew Swoboda from Memphis, to coach tight ends and the special teams. So it's going to be a new offensive staff, but at the same time, the talent is still going to be vast. And, and luckily, defensively, they did lose Patrick Surtain, early to the NFL draft. But I think they have most of those pieces back. And as you've seen in the transfer portal, Nick Saban has been active, bringing in Henry To'oTo'o from Tennessee. So I think defensively on paper, they've got as good a group as they've had, in many years, probably since it's probably the most talented group since 2016. And, of course, that team fell one game short of 15-0 in a national championship. But I think they feel like, despite the fact of losing a Mac Jones and, of course, the spectacular talent they did outside with Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and Najee Harris, that they still have enough young talent to compensate on offense.
Tell us, Drew, about the new quarterback, Bryce Young. Very talented, and I know expectations are very high.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I thought he had a really good spring. And you got to remember, guys, it was his first full spring because with COVID, he did not have a chance to get in any scrimmages or a true spring practice in his freshman year. And then he came down with COVID-19 during fall camp in August and was really only able to take part in one true scrimmage. So, and then Mac Jones took the torch and had as good a year as we've ever seen at the quarterback position at Alabama, the best year really in school history single season-wise, and we didn't see as much of him in a backup role. So, it's going to be your first extensive time to see him, but I had a chance to see him, in a couple of scrimmages, including A-Day, and I thought he did outstanding. I thought he really played well, and I think he's just going to continue to get better. I mean, he was heavily recruited. He was the number one quarterback by some in the country coming out a couple of years ago in his senior class. So he comes from Mater Dei, a school that's, a big-time program. They've produced many Division I quarterbacks, including Georgia's J.T. Daniels, who preceded him. So I think he's used to the limelight. He's a little bit different style of quarterback. He's more mobile than a Mac Jones. He's a guy that can extend plays, but he can also throw from the pocket. He's a little bit shorter, though. He's about 5'10", 5'11", really shorter than Tua Tagovailoa, who is 6 feet tall. So there's going to be some adjustments to be made offensively. But if you saw him in the A-Day, he seemed very, very comfortable. And I think the more he plays, the better he'll get. And I think his supporting cast should be pretty good. I know certainly Alabama, I felt like, had their best offensive line that they've ever, assembled last year. That's saying a lot with that 2012 group. So the guys in front of him are going to be the key because you have to keep Bryce healthy because, as you guys know, there is no experience behind him. Paul Tyson, the great-grandson of Coach Paul Bear Bryant, has never played it down. And then, of course, Jalen Milroe, who really created some buzz as a true freshman from Katy, Texas, but he's never played the game either. So to me, the most important thing offensively for Alabama is to keep Bryce Young healthy, and it's all going to start up front with that offensive line that's being rebuilt, but it should be very talented.
And Drew, when I think about these different offensive coordinators that's been up under, Nick Saban, I mean, Lane Kiffin, he wanted that down the field passing game. I mean, Mike Locksley, he kind of used both the passing game and the run game. The way Steve Sarkisian used these pre-snap motions to be able to get guys just out flanking the defense was incredible. What kind of offense do you think Bill O'Brien's going to bring to the table, especially with him coming from the NFL back to college?
Yeah, Ben, it's great to be with you. We've enjoyed having you on 97.7 The Zone, and that's going to be the real interesting thing because I think everybody. Nick Saban lets his coaches coach. He lets them add their own wrinkles. It wouldn't surprise me if the tight end is more involved in this offense because one of the things, as you guys know, Bill O'Brien's history. He's a Bill Belichick guy, and they've always included the tight end in their offense. I think one of the guys that caught his eye early was Cameron Latu, who is a guy that has not played a lot, really has been going through a transition from linebacker to tight end the last 2 years, getting used to the position, but he really seemed to kind of take to Bill O'Brien's offense and the wrinkles he was adding. You saw the touchdown pass that Bryce Young had in A-Day was on Latu, and I think Latu has a chance to be a big-time factor this year, along with Jaleel Billingsley, who kind of, after the injury to Jalen Waddle last year, kind of had to kind of fill that void and took advantage of that and became a much bigger part of that Alabama offense. And so I think it's going to be interesting. I still think they're going to throw the ball down the field, but when you have to replace the talent that they do outside, I mean, there's still going to be guys like Trayshawn Holden that had a nice A-Day. I really like Javon Baker as well. And then you'll have John Mechie back from the injury. And then don't forget Ajay Hall. Ajay really, had an outstanding A-Day and has really had the right mindset coming in as a true freshman to contribute at wide receiver. But I don't think it'll change too much as far as the style of offense, Ben, but it may change how they utilize certain weapons. And I think the tight end spot with Jaleel Billingsley and Cameron Latu is something to watch them and as far as having a comfort level for Bryce Young. And I think also when you think about the running game, I think, you're having to replace Najee Harris, who, of course, was your Doak Walker Award winner, but you're going to have talented guys like a Brian Robinson who returned for his 5th year. But don't forget the 2 young guys back there who I really like a lot. And, of course, one of them being, of course, Jace McClellan from Aledo, Texas, who showed some explosiveness late in the year, especially against Arkansas. And then Roydell Williams, who I thought ended the spring on a high note. So I think the weapons around Bryce will be really good. They're talented. They just haven't been able to showcase their ability yet. But I think offensively, it'll be much the same, but you might see the tight ends more involved due to the fact of Bill O'Brien's history offensively and what you've seen him do at Penn State and then with the Houston Texans with Deshaun Watson. I think you'll see him move Bryce around and spread the ball around, but I wouldn't be surprised if the tight end spot with Jaleel Billingsley and Cameron Latu is a little bit bigger part of the offense than it maybe was the last couple of years with all that talent you saw outside those 4 first-round draft choices.
Drew DeArmond, ESPN The Zone, Huntsville, Alabama, also TiderInsider.com, joining us here on 3 and Out. And you look at the defense. Do you even bother asking questions about Alabama and their defense at this point? As long as Nick Saban's there, it seems like preseason they have ACL injuries and, oh, man, they lose a such-and-such starter at this position, and then they just put the next guy in there, and there doesn't seem to be any drop-off. How do you see this defense here in 2021, and has Nick Saban adapted it a little bit to the kind of way college football is played now? We talk about the adaptation of the offense, but where, hey, you don't have to go in the SEC and just keep everybody to 10 points or less to be able to win ball games.
Well, yeah, and I really think defensively it's going to be their deepest group since 2016 and probably the deepest group of edge pass rushers that I've ever seen Alabama have. I know that's saying a lot. They've had a lot of talent. I think they've got the top outside linebacker tandem in college football and Will Anderson, who you guys saw the impact he had, basically the National Defensive Freshman of the Year last year. You've got him and a steady senior like Chris Allen, who returned, native of Baton Rouge, who's a really good outside backer to pair with Will Anderson. But the thing is, now they're 3 deep, at outside backer because You've got guys like King Makuta and Drew Sanders, who are the second team guys, and then a guy like Chris Braswell, who was dominant in the A-Day game. He and Quindarius Robinson, in some cases, could be third team guys, but there's no drop off. I think it's as deep as I've ever seen on the edges, and then inside you've got Christian Harris, who I think is poised for a really good year at weak side linebacker, and now you lose Dylan Moses to the NFL, but you gain Henry To'oTo'o, who was a part of some Tennessee defenses that were good, but not anything close to what he's going to be surrounded with at Alabama. He already knows the scheme really well because Jeremy Pruitt ran a lot of the same concepts that he'll see at Alabama. So, and I think Jalen Moody could have slid into that Mike spot and had a good spring, but Nick Saban just thought Henry To'oTo'o was too talented to pass up. So you've really got three good inside backers there, and then some other young guys like a Jackson Bratton. And even, I know I'm kind of burying the lead here, but Deontay Lawson, the true freshman from Mobile, I thought he should have been MVP of the A-Day game defensively. He's a true freshman. He's cut out of the same cloth as guys like C.J. Mosley and Dante Hightower, who I think can impact as true freshmen because they have a special mindset. And I think he's been able to really absorb this complicated defense quickly. So to me, the key is going to be replacing Patrick Surtain. That's probably going to first up will be Jalen Armour-Davis, who's a redshirt junior who's kind of had to bide his time from Mobile, Alabama and St. Paul's High School. But I do think there's another couple of guys to watch, one being true freshman Kool-Aid McKinstry from Pinson Valley, who I watched extensively in high school. I think he's got a chance to push Jalen Armour-Davis. And then Marcus Banks, a guy that he missed the A-Day game, but he had a couple of picks, including a pick six in the scrimmage prior to that. He's a sophomore from Texas who I think has a chance to step up as well. And then they didn't have Malachi Moore, who I thought was the best freshman DB in the country last year. He should be back healthy. His backup, Brian Branch, kind of picked up some of the slack. So to me right now, if Jalen Armour-Davis builds on what we saw in the spring, I'll be honest with you guys, I don't see a weakness in this Alabama defense. And I think it's good for Alabama this year because offensively, I know I mentioned the young talent, but they're going to have to, hit the ground running a little bit. But if they have a couple of growing pains early, even against a quality opponent like Miami, this defense for Alabama should be good enough to back them up. And I think they're going to have the best defense in the country because I really believe a guy like Tim Smith at the nose spot, it wouldn't surprise me if he beats out the returner DJ Dale. And Tim Smith, to me, was that guy last year when he was inserted into the lineup. I think the second half of the season is when Alabama went to the next level as a complete football team and why they were able to go 13-0 and win the national title.
Drew, finally, the SEC West is so good, so deep. How do you see that division, and who do you think on paper at least is the top contender to Alabama?
Well, a lot of people are talking about Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher. They've got a lot of talent returning on both sides of the football. Their running game's intact. They've got some returners, especially the guys that they lost to injury at wide receiver. The whole key is going to be, is Haynes King that guy at quarterback? Who's going to be the QB? Is he going to be able to, to direct that offense? I still wouldn't sleep on LSU, though. I think they made some coaching changes. Certainly, they've always had the talent. If they can turn it around defensively and be much better on that side of the ball, I really like the way they finished last year. People, they went on the road, they won in the swamp, and they got a huge win there, and they were able to finish 5-5 after that. What really was just a disastrous start. So I think they've got a lot of talent. I would probably lean toward LSU a little bit over Texas A&M, though I think they're kind of bracketed at number 2 there. I think by far, though, I think those are the 3 best teams in the Western Division. It's still a really good division because Lane Kiffin's Ole Miss team is very dangerous because of his offensive acumen and how well he knows Nick Saban. But I think right now I would have to say probably Alabama, LSU, and then Texas A&M. Those are, to me, all 3 of those teams are really top 10 teams in the country when it comes to talent. And then when you look at the coaching staff, and so I would say my top 3 right now in the West would be Alabama, LSU, and Texas A&M. But it's going to be still very interesting because Brian Harsin and Auburn, a lot of times when Auburn is underestimated and not expected to do a lot, they can surprise you. So it's going to be interesting with their changes on both sides of the ball, and with Derek Mason being a guy that knows the SEC so well, how Auburn does. But I would probably have Auburn fourth in the West right now. But those top three are awfully good guys and very, very talented.
ESPN The Zone in Huntsville, also a Tighter Insider joining us here on 3 and Out. Drew, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Drew DeArmond, and again, Alabama, just the rich keep getting richer. As he said, hey, one guy goes down, there's probably another guy that's been prepared by Nick Saban to step in and have no drop off there. At the end of the day, it's really kind of disgusting when you think about it.
It's gonna be ugly. It's gonna be ugly, and I know that Drew was going through all the names. I mean, we forget the fact that Henry To'oTo'o. Who's gonna be running around, be able to just run around and make a tackle? But BJ, I mean, he said that Alabama's defense is gonna be the best in the country. So I know Kevin said you don't got to win 10-0. If they needed to, I think they could, which makes them even more scary on paper.
No, it's the best defense in the country and the depth everywhere. Kevin, you're right. They look, it's Alabama.
That's the best take I think anybody could say about that. At the end of the day, we've got more to come here on 3 and Out. Don't forget, coming up in hour number 2, Jared Binko, Georgia Southern Athletic Director, going to join us in about a little less than an hour from right now. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us. Hawks and 76ers tonight, Game 5. Can the Hawks jump in front here? As Ben has said a number of times, it's amazing how the national focus changes from, man, the Hawks got by the Knicks. They were clearly the better team. Well, now the 76ers are here too. Well, who are the Hawks going to be able to get trounced by? And it's like people are already chalking up that maybe the 76ers are running out of gas here if Embiid is unable to go or be 100%.
Defense, got to start defensively. I'm going to stay consistent with that. You did a really, really nice job in the second half in Game 4. Can you carry that defensive intensity over into Game 5? Going to be tough on the road, but you got to do it.
I just leave a trigger Trey. I don't think he's going to have 2 back-to-back bad performances. I think he showed why he is who he is at the end of last game. And you dealing with a guy in Joel Embiid who already got a built-in excuse when they do lose to them Hawks because he's letting us know about his knee. I don't want to hear about your knee if you out there. Talk about that, you know what I'm saying, once the series is over. But I got them Hawks. I got them Hawks getting a big dub tonight.
Hey, we'll see what happens there this evening. We got so much to get to in hour number 2. We'll take 3, including more coaches saying ridiculous things. And Jared Binko, Georgia Southern Athletic Director, going to join us certainly with the 2021 season on the horizon for college football. Name, image, likeness, 12-team playoff. A lot to get to with Jared Binko coming up in hour number 2. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's hour 2 of 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you were with us. So much to get to here this hour. We will chat with Jared Benko, Georgia Southern Athletic Director, coming up in about 40 minutes or so here on the show, and certainly plenty to get to with the upcoming 2021 season. Full capacity there at Paulson Stadium, a 12-team playoff on the horizon that could obviously benefit the Sun Belt tremendously, and of course, name, image, likeness, which in this state is coming up in a handful of days. What about 14 days? That will be legislation on the books. So how do they look ahead to deal with those issues as well? We'll see. We'll chat with Jared Benko about that coming up in about 40 minutes, as I said. But first, let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, fellas, obviously Clemson, Georgia, going to start the season off with an ACC-SEC matchup there. But what ACC-SEC game are you looking forward to the most after that one?
It's got to be Alabama-Miami. And I understand that Alabama is going to be a double-digit favorite, understandably so, too. I mean, you just heard from Drew, this is a team that might have its best defense in 5 or 6 years and great talent offensively, but it's still Alabama-Miami. And I think all of us are college football traditionalists. We love the history. We love the pageantry. And to see those two teams, those two uniforms, those helmets out there on the field together, those are two of the most iconic programs in the history of the sport, man. I mean, and something tells me if De'Aaron King is a full go, that might be a little closer than people think. You know, Miami, you've seen them in the preseason top 10 to 12, but I think Alabama and Miami is what college football is all about right there in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium as well. Going to be a lot of fun. So, yeah, you might have some games that potentially the line might be a little closer, but Alabama might. Come on, Kevin. It's what college football is all about, Alabama-Miami.
So you get to see old Bryce Young, and De'Aaron King, BJ. I'll give you another one of Mercedes-Benz. Give me Ole Miss and Louisville. I think when you look at Matt Corral is probably going to be, not probably going to be, definitely going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country this year. Might be the top quarterback coming back in the SEC this year. Mikael Cunningham is a guy that most people don't really know enough about, but a big-time talent, dual threat at the quarterback position. I don't know. I'm really looking forward to see how that Louisville offense is going to be. But if that Louisville offense, BJ, can be what we think it can be, even though you're losing guys like Tutu Atwell to the National Football League, Ole Miss is known for offense. And that's about it. That defense can't really stop nobody when you look at them, guys trying to be able to see who can outscore the other team. So looking forward to seeing Lane Kiffin year 2 and that, him and Matt Corral in that Ole Miss offense. But watch out for them Louisville boys in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome for game number 2.
I would stay with Ben, not that same game, but I think Louisville and Kentucky would be a good one I'm looking forward to. Why? Because when you talk about, what does the ACC have to do to try to at least cordon in to the SEC a little bit, I think that's probably the closest kind of interstate rivalry that they have. Obviously Georgia Tech still rebuilding with Jeff Collins. I don't think South Carolina is anywhere close to Clemson, and Florida State is not really even right now as well. So I think those two teams probably the closest talent-wise, and you have a Louisville team trying to kind of come back on the ascension a little bit, and Kentucky trying to kind of prove that, hey, we belong to stay where we're at, if not make a claim. And we've had people who follow Kentucky say, hey, they might push for second in the East. It's a bold claim. You got to beat teams like Louisville, obviously, if you're going to make those claims out there as well. Moving along, take 2. You can add one college wide receiver from the last 50 years to your favorite team for this season. Who is it? Bill Connolly put out the top 50 wide receivers in the last 50 years. Why we bring this up, but you could pick one guy last 50 years. That's obviously a boatload of wide receivers, and you can add him into your team for this year. Who you take?
Randy Moss, Marshall, and in 1997, Randy Moss had, get this, okay, one season. These are not career totals. One season, 97, he had 96 catches for 1,820 yards, and get ready for this, 26 touchdowns. 26 touchdown catches. And obviously Randy Moss, what he did in the NFL, you're talking about one of the great receivers of all time, any level, every level. But Randy Moss to go for 96 and 97 and 26 touchdowns. That's absurd. That's like when you're playing on the video game and you have it on the low level and you're just dominating. So a lot of great names. It was good to, and I know I'm picking one, Kevin, for clarification. That's my guy. But we were talking in the show meeting, Calvin Johnson, Peter Warrick, just from the modern Michael Crabtree. I mean, that's not even going back further than that. But yeah, Randy Moss for me.
I can't disagree with that, but I am going with Calvin Johnson. You don't just breeze past him. Calvin Johnson did in the college what he did in the pro. Just throw it up to him. People talking about, man, he's not a great route runner. Don't care. He's 6'5", 230, and can run a 4.3. What are you going to do with it? And if you just happen to throw it behind him and he's running to the left, don't worry. He can just stick that right arm out there and pull it back in. Give me Calvin Johnson all day, every day. See, most of the time, Kevin, BJ, you got to have a guy that has this skill set of that thing. He's tall, but he's not fast. Right? He's big, but he doesn't play physical. He got a long wingspan, but he can't catch. Calvin Johnson went to the man pool and he dove in because he owns the pool. Give me Calvin Johnson, and he can wear whatever. And Calvin, whatever. If you want to wear 2 numbers, you want to wear 0 for one game, 1 for the next game. I don't care. Give me Calvin Johnson all day, and DBs be well.
Yeah, it's hard to defend that on any level. I think most people would take Calvin Johnson. I would pick him as well, Ben. Take 3 if pitchers, and this has been the big crackdown here in MLB. It's going to start next week. 10-game suspension if you get caught with it. If pitchers can't use sticky substances, should batters get to be able to do that with batting gloves and pine tar on the bat? Should they get a grip advantage, if you will?
Yeah, this is an interesting question, and I'm intrigued to get your perspective, Kevin, because I quite frankly I've learned a lot about some of these gray area, unwritten rule kind of things in baseball the last couple days, the last couple weeks. I understand that maybe the argument is the impact is more dramatic, and again, I don't know this. I'm not a baseball player, much less an expert on this stuff, but I guess I could hear that if you tell me, hey, when I have something that helps me grip the baseball, that allows me to spin it at a more dramatic rate or add movement that is more significant or more quantifiable or more easily measured than, say, the grip on the bat. But I do think it's an interesting question. And, Kevin, I was talking with you about this because I just noticed this a couple of days ago. But not only do batters have gloves and the pine tar, but they also have, like, thumb guards, which I understand are partly protection for for kind of the soft part of your hand and your thumb, but I think they could also potentially sort of stabilize the swing in some respects and kind of help your follow through stay a little more consistent. And I don't know the extent of that, but just when you talk it out, if you're a pitcher and everybody's perspective is kind of slanted based on what position you play. Like I've heard a lot of pitchers the last couple of weeks say, hey, yes, we've gone overboard, but maybe like a little bit of, sweat or some sunscreen or whatever. That was something that we used in the past, but that's a little bit different than using something that's specifically designed for grip and sort of impacting the hold of the baseball. But I don't know. I mean, I think that's something worth examining. I do, because if you're gonna say, well, we don't want any sort of synthetic substance impacting grip, I mean, where do you draw that line? So I think it's something worth looking at. I don't necessarily know that gloves would be where you start because, football, you have gloves when you catch and but I think maybe the amount of pine tar might be something you could look at. But I do think there's sort of a world here worth exploring. And Kevin, I'll defer to you, but I do think there's some interesting possibilities here.
This has nothing to do. Listen. At the end of the day, the pitchers are on deck, right? Literally. Oh, hey, you're on the mound. They on display. Everybody talking about them. Don't bring the batters into this. So I don't want to hear nothing about no batters. Look, basically, sports are about competitive edges outside of the game of sports in the sense where we all evenly matched. So right now, the pitchers can't use sticky substance. Now they can actually the batters be able to use one of the pin tar. Hell yeah, should be able to use it. I mean, it's rough out there. Have you seen? I'm trying to go out there and be as competitive as I can. And this is really about I'm going to use it anyway. Until I get caught, I am going to use it. It's not like, and then listen, competitive edges don't mean you're cheating. Let me. I mean, I'm serious. Like, I understand this notion with the pitchers right now, Kevin. Clayton Kershaw get a sticky substance, he gets suspended, I'll believe it. Until then, I don't care about the 6th starter for the Cardinals. I'm just saying, I know that the pictures are on display right now, but this is a part of baseball, isn't it, Kevin? Like, everybody ain't gonna like everything about the game of baseball. But isn't sticky substances on, with pitchers, isn't that normal? Isn't batters having pen talk? Aren't these things normal? I tell you how you do it. Get rid of all the sticky substances. Whoever makes the sticky substances, they go out of business. The pen talk companies.
Yeah.
As long as they're available, they should be able to use.
I just look at it. I mean, pitchers have been trying to get an advantage forever, from sandpaper in the glove to all kind of little stuff that they could do to scuff balls up to get spin rate going. And this is just the latest iteration of that. And again, it doesn't take a huge Twitter search. And I'm talking about going back just a couple of years where you see guys who cover baseball for a living openly talk about hey, is anybody going to mention the fact that pitchers are out there cheating every night and nobody cares? It's that's been an openly discussed thing by baseball writers, by guys in the business of covering baseball for a long, long time. Everybody is trying to get a competitive advantage. Why? Because if you're Max Fried and you can spin it, and they track these things now, say 1,800 RPM on your curveball, and I'm only getting 1,200, and it doesn't break as much, and it's not as effective, and it's getting launched out of the yard, but I put a little tacky on there, and all of a sudden it's spinning like nobody's business. Why wouldn't you do it? And I think that's kind of what a lot of people are saying when it comes to the pitchers, that it's not just the case of a few guys doing it. It is everybody's. I mean, I've seen quotes, at least from Major League Baseball players talking to reporters saying, look, it's the elephant in the room. Everybody knows they're doing it. They just don't say anything about it. It's and now people start speaking up about it. So it's not just one guy. And my guess is, I'm not going to name names, but my guess is if the Braves have 16 guys on their pitching staff, I would be willing to bet 13 or 14 of them are probably trying to get some kind of a competitive advantage with the ball. And maybe your retort to that would be when they need to cheat better. I mean, maybe, but I would be willing to bet that a lot of guys are trying to push the limits, as Ben said, of what they can get away with. I think the pine tar stuff, to me, it's also a safety hazard. If it helps you hold onto the bat, good, because if you let go of the bat, where's it going? Potentially towards a player in the field, potentially towards a dugout, an umpire, what have you, and that obviously would hurt. So I don't necessarily I think the problem with the pine tar and George Brett famously had a home run called back because of it, because it was too far up the bat, is that it kind of can harden your bat, and a harder bat would obviously give you a little better response and maybe a little bit less chance of breaking your bat. So I think there's some of that, but he also got called out for it. So no, I mean, I think getting a competitive advantage in baseball has gone on for as long as I can remember. And you don't have to look far to find guys who want to cheat. I've watched a guy, I'm not going to name his name, but I mean, it's out there. You can find it. A former major leaguer, former number 1 pick, talked about doctoring bats in high school and college. And he said, look, we played with metal bats. We would beat the brakes off our bats up against a wall. Why? So we could flatten the side of the bat and basically turn it into a mallet instead of a bat, and you get a larger hitting area. Is that legal? No, but they still did it. So I think that is just one of those things in baseball where it's always going to happen. And that's just with equipment and the way the game is played. I think in other sports it's more difficult to do that. But, yeah, I think if pitchers are going to have sticky substances, Ben, I think you check, obviously pay more close attention to what's going on with the bats, what's going on there as well with some guys at the plate if you want to be consistent with it.
You just want to when you talk about the big time sports, we talk about MLB, NBA, NFL. Everybody's always trying to find a competitive edge. Every single, and like you said, Kevin, all of a sudden the pitchers are up right now. Why? Because guys are, I guess, they spinning the ball in a way, and now that's more camera angles too. Now we can slow it up so much. Like, look at this thing. And it ain't breaking as much and all this. Now, could the batters be up next? Yeah, but guess what? Nothing's gonna change. All this shows is, hey, dude, we getting a little bit too sloppy with it. Like too many of us, are getting too sloppy with it. Because if I'm in the NFL, you always looking for competitive edges. Basketball, you always looking at it's what can I get away with and still be competitive? What can I get away with and still have a competitive edge without everybody teeters the line. This notion of sportsmanship, man, get out of here with that nonsense. Everybody's trying to do something. And for those guys that don't, all power to you. I'm not mad at you. But if you ain't towing the line, you doing yourself a disservice, because if guys had to reveal every single thing they did when they played, you will be shocked with some of the guys and some of the stuff they actually got away with.
Sure. And again, it's not just baseball. I think you see it in every sport. Like you hear it. And again, it's harder to, I mean, you can't move the goal in the NBA. You can't, kind of doctor the basketball, but you hear it from guys in the NBA all the time. It's like, hey, if you got to play a guy that's better than you offensively and you're on defense, you get up close, kind of grab a little top of the shorts there with the offhand. Officials can't see it. He starts to run away from you. You give him a little tug, say, not so fast. Is that cheating? Yes. Is it not a foul? I mean, they're not going to call it. And we hear, Ben, you've told us for years about offensive linemen. Guys in the line say, look, I know where the officials are. If I grab a guy this way, I can legally hold on to him and it won't get called. Is that cheating? Of course it is. Is it going to get called? No. So I think you're pushing the limits in a number of areas in professional sports, but this one has become absolutely rampant and kind of blatant for everybody to see, because you can see it in some of the results that are happening out there with some of these pitchers as well. That's Take 3. We do it every day at this time. Jared Binko going to join us coming up in just a little bit here in hour number 2. But when we come back, more coaches saying absurd things. We'll get to that next here on 3 and Out. Welcome back, 3 and Out, and we go to today's latest installment of Coaches Saying Dumb Things just because they can, and it's at a press conference. Today, the Jags had a press conference. Brian Schottenheimer with the Jags, the passing game coordinator there in Jacksonville, was asked about the quarterbacks and, where they're at, about, who's going to be the starting quarterback. He said, quote, "It's still too early to say how this thing is going to play out." I mean, okay, so you drafted a guy number 1 overall. He's the most heralded quarterback that's come out in the last at least 5 or 6 years. He's already got his own billboards in Jacksonville, but we're not sure how this is going to play out. You made Gardner Minshew shave. He cut his hair. He knows he's not going to be the starting quarterback. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, Ben, I don't really get kind of what the idea is here. Look, Gardner Minshew's your backup quarterback. Trevor Lawrence is your starting quarterback. And, I'm a guy that has, been really appreciative of the production and the proficiency we've seen from Gardner Minshew. He's done a nice job. Maybe one day he gets another chance to start, maybe with another team potentially. But, yeah, Trevor Lawrence is your starting quarterback. You don't draft him number 1 overall. Like Kevin said, he's got commercials and billboards. Like he's the face of the franchise. He's the starting quarterback. There's no chance. And I know you've said, hey, in an ideal world, maybe for rookie quarterbacks, you get a couple of games or a half a season. No,
yeah.
Ben said that before. That's not happening here. That's not happening.
You were say something else, because I know coaches from time to time, Ben, like to say, well, I'm trying to keep the competitive juices going and make sure there's competition on the roster. Okay, that's good in college. That's good in high school. That's good in middle school. Last I checked, Trevor Lawrence is being paid to play football. If he's the guy, he's the guy. You don't need to go out there and say, "Oh, we don't know yet," and hope he picks it up competitively. He's being paid to be the quarterback. Like, it's okay to just say he's the guy.
Yeah, Shadi, I'm not understanding this. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Oh, I don't know. The truth. Because I get it when this notion of we don't want to just give it to him. We want him to earn it. You drafted him number 1. I mean, he's got more billboards in Jacksonville than businesses in Jacksonville. The people's actually out there trying to promote it. Like that's Trevor Lawrence right there. We want you to know who it's going to be. I mean, think about the Jacksonville media for a second. If you covering the Jags, you had to deal with Chris Doyle. Well, you had to go Urban Meyer, Chris Doyle. Then you got to go Tim Tebow. Now, Travis Etienne playing wide receiver. Now we don't know who the quarterback is going to be. You ain't even heard from Gardner Minshew. They won't even let him talk to the media. This dude, he looks like a regular guy. That BJ got a haircut. I mean, shaved the beard. I mean, he's looking like he's getting ready for a business fair or be a public speaker than to be Gardner. He does all this, and they still not gonna let him be the starter. I understand why coaches do this. It just don't make no sense why they do it. BJ, me and you went to a Jags game, and we're staring up at the billboard saying, "Who is that? I know that's Jalen." And we went, Yashanique Ngakoue. It took us like 30 minutes to realize who that was. The Jaguars have recognizable players. They can take Fred Taylor down and Mark Brunell down and Tony Baselli down because they got players that they recognize now. The guy who had Halloween costumes, he finna get told, "Sorry, man, we appreciate you, helping us with Nick Foles didn't work out. But now we got the guy we really covered." And BJ, I told you this. What is your first choice? It's always going to be your first choice. Doesn't mean you won't settle for something else. You went to the restaurant and you ordered the Trevor and all they had was the Gardner. You got the hell up and left. You didn't want that. Even you, Mr. Gardner Minshew lover himself, I haven't heard you say one thing about Gardner since you got Trevor, because I told you all you had in the past was just Gardner Minshew. Hey, man, this tastes pretty good. It does. Hey, man, they got that Trevor in the back. What? You lying? And they walk out.
But I mean, Ben, this is what I'm asking you because why? I mean, to Kevin's point, right? It's like, yeah, you want to create the competitive environment, but in the NFL, do you need to create a competitive environment? I mean, do guys hear that and go, "Dude, why are you even saying that? Like, Trevor Lawrence is the starting quarterback."
You do need to create a competitive environment because Trevor Lawrence, I mean, let's face it, he's never had to compete for a starting spot. They let Kelly Bryant play 4 games to make it look like he was competing right for the spot. They gave it to him when Kelly was outperforming him at that point. I think now what I feel bad the most about Trevor Lawrence is any quarterback that starts from day one does usually not have long-term success because by the time he starts playing well, he beat up. It's not that his skill set has gone down. He's gotten beaten up a lot. So I understand what Shadi is trying to do, but I'm sorry, man. Like, we know how these questions go. We know how press conferences. No, man, we really haven't really talked about it yet. And if I'm in that press conference, I'm like, really, Shadi? Like, that's all you got for us? Or look, obviously Trevor's gonna be the guy, but we want to make sure he's ready. So he's throwing a lot of things at him. Like give me that. Don't give me the no, we really haven't figured it out. I said, listen, man, what? Gardner Minshew lives in my neighborhood and his house is for sale. So you want to give me something else? Like, come on, man. You don't got to lie to us because BJ Gardner did enough to make sure that he'll get an opportunity with another team, right? You know who Gardner Minshew's hero is? Ryan Fitzpatrick. That is his hero. But I just think that when you get these type of answers, I mean, Shadi, that is the son of Marty Shotton, may he rest in peace, Mr. Beam. You got to look into the beam. I don't know what the hell he was talking about. Got to be this beam thing. I don't know what he was talking about. But I just think that's the problem with coaches now. They just give you something and just want you to move on. We haven't picked anybody.
Yes, we're not sure how this is going to play out. I do. 16 is going to be the starting quarterback. That's how I know it's going to play out.
Exactly. I mean, I didn't ask you, but listen, I didn't ask you about Tebow. I asked you about Trevor.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out, including a good story about the Atlanta Braves we can get to. And Jared Binko going to join us in about 15 minutes. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on this Wednesday afternoon. Jared Binko, Georgia Southern Athletic Director, going to join us coming up here in about 10 minutes here on the show. So much to get to with him as the ever-changing world of college athletics going on in just the last couple of months, all the things that have taken place around college athletics. He will join us, though, coming up in about 10 minutes. But kind of a cool story here, if you missed it, around the Atlanta Braves, BJ and Ben, and they need a lot of good news these days. I don't know if you heard this story, but Josh Tomlin was in Atlanta at a sporting goods store when he noticed a kid and his parents getting ready for a rec league game, a little league game. And he was shopping with his parents, and he was wearing this Josh Tomlin's number, like not a Josh Tomlin jersey, but he's wearing his number. So he went up and talked to him, was like, hey, cool number, all that kind of stuff, talking baseball with him. And then after talking with the parents and the kids, left him and went and bought the kid a A2000 glove, which again, if you aren't familiar, that's like a $400 glove, and got the protection plan, the steaming treatment, all that. So you're probably $500-600 in potentially on this thing. Maybe at the very least $450 probably on this thing, and just goes and gives it to the kid and as a good gesture, man. That's the kind of stuff you don't hear about a lot of times, but good on Josh Tomlin doing that and spreading some good love and cheer there out there in the community.
Yeah, great story. Cool to see. And that's something that, aside from just getting the glove, which was incredibly generous, you're talking about, that's a story that, that kid will remember forever. Hey man, I met and talked to Josh Tomlin and he got me this glove, and, a major leaguer. So you love stuff like that. And, just a way to positively impact people and help people. Sometimes it can be, just a few short minutes, or, a gesture or two here or there. So absolutely positively impacting the world, and a cool story. Great job, Josh.
Yeah, Josh, to me, I showed who he really is. I mean, I think most often the times when you get an opportunity to be a professional athlete, you get to show people sometimes that this is just a part of me, not all of me. Josh just noticed the young man is wearing his number, and he ends up getting him something that he's going to remember forever. I think that when you start talking about what is the role of a professional athlete, Josh Tomlin kind of just shows you what the role is. Go out of your way. But I heard somebody say this: without the people that cheer for LeBron, we don't know who LeBron is. Without people buying his jersey, we don't know who they are. Josh Tomlin obviously is a regular guy who just happens to be a professional because he can do regular things without people noticing him. But him going out of his way for a kind gesture shows to listen, man, not only am I a baseball player, man, but I'm a great human being. I'm gonna make sure I do this for you, like you mentioned, Kevin. Who knows if that kid didn't always want that glove, and those parents, let me say this, most parents can't afford a $400 anything, let alone an item for their child. So shout out to Josh Tomlin. I think sometimes we just forget that they're people. And sometimes you get to show people, hey, listen, I'm a person just like you. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do it. So shout out to Josh Tomlin, a kind gesture that'll go a long way for that young man.
Yeah, not too many times you can say, hey, a major leaguer, bought me some equipment, or like, hey, Tom Brady bought me a football and a helmet so I could go play. It's like you don't hear stuff like that too terribly. And not too many guys will ever have that opportunity to say that happened. So, yeah, great memory for that kid, and certainly one that, again, he will remember. And that's as somebody who has kids who play baseball, that's a pretty good deal. That's as nice a glove as a lot of major leaguers wear. So good on Josh Tomlin coming through and making it happen for that young man. Hey, we'll come back. Jared Binko waiting in the wings. He will join us. We'll talk to the Georgia Southern Athletic Director when we return. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back, 3 and Out on this Thursday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com, also live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. I mean, college athletics changing by the minute, it seems like, and so much has happened and will be happening in the coming weeks and months around college football. We had to check in with our next guest. He's the athletic director at Georgia Southern University. Jared Binko joins us here on 3 and Out. And Jared, appreciate you coming on, man. And I know
what's up?
Ever since you've been the AD, it's been anything but business as usual for an athletic director. But we ask you about some more new stuff. The 12-team college football playoff appears to be coming in a couple of years. How big of a potential impact is that for you guys at the Sun Belt and at Georgia Southern?
Well, one, it's good being with you guys today. I'm just honored Ben's here finally because Ben was out last time, and so he was too good for my last appearance, but I won't hold that against him. No, listen, I'll tell you on a positive note. I mean, this time last year, we're trying to figure out if we're going to play football. So obviously we're in a much better situation. So from a positive standpoint, listen, I think that CFP expansion, there's some positives in there. I think the piece to me, you start looking at, obviously expanding from 4 to 12. I mean, anytime for us as a group of 5 institution, we have a chance and better position ourselves in our university and our conference to get into the CFP. I think that's a positive, right? I'll tell you, obviously looking logistic wise, I think it's going to be a little change, assuming it gets adopted, because what happens, as you all know, I mean, you have Thanksgiving weekend, and outside of Army, Navy, and a couple one-offs, those first 2 weeks of December are pretty dead. There's not a lot going on. And so you start looking at it, filling those gaps, and you start looking at how that ties into the bowl weekend. So to me, the change is really going to be those first 2 weeks of December from an operational standpoint. And you could be going from, game to game to game and game and trying to logistically move a lot of people around. I think the other thing, too, is obviously wear and tear on the student athletes, just making sure that you were the best we can to position them for those additional games. But I think there's a lot of positives. I think there's more positives than negatives. And ultimately, I think just from an exposure standpoint, the playoffs, there's been a lot of talk about that for a while. And, everyone loves NCAA basketball because of those 64 teams. Really, there's always a magical run. And people like the underdog. And so I think there's a chance, hopefully, we can get some more teams in there and more representation. So,
are you surprised at how quickly the college football playoff has expanded, or is this something that maybe you anticipated and kind of thought was coming relatively quickly?
Yeah, here's what I'd tell you. Really, nothing happens on a dime. There's talks been going on for years about this. So, I think to me, having some finality, BJ, I think that's something where sometimes you always wonder discussions and when they actually materialize. And so knowing that in 23 is the first year potentially that it could go into play. The one outlier is always TV contract, because there's always things, that's why I share with people, like there's always things behind the scenes that can sometimes dictate or strongly influence when things are adopted. And so when I heard 23 for the first time, I was like, well, that's great, because I was honestly thinking probably 25, 26 on out. So I thought that was good. And again, there's some things that still have to procedurally take place, but all that's to say, I think it's good for college football. I think it's good for our student athletes. So.
And Jared, when you think about you talk about being able to have football back, you guys gonna be at full capacity, just getting back to normalcy. How much different is the term opening day gonna mean this year when you look at so much that went on last year? You guys dealt with not having as many players for COVID. Y'all first game of the year last season. What is opening day gonna mean to you this year? Gonna mean to the team this year? Gonna mean to Paulson and dare I say the city of Statesboro?
Yeah, listen, I think it's like anything in life. When things are detrimentally impacted, you appreciate things better. And so I know for myself, I appreciate playing last year. I think seeing a full capacity stadium, I'll appreciate it more. Again, I just think it's like anything in life for all of us. This past 14, 15 months has impacted. Gosh, there's been people, that unfortunately lost their lives and families that have been impacted away from sports. And so from our vantage point, I think for the last 14, 15 months, I find myself appreciating things more, whether it be health of myself or my family or just things that I took for granted. And so I think for football in the South, as you know, it's king. And so I think a lot of people that didn't feel comfortable last year coming to games, didn't want to come, couldn't come, whatever the situation was. I think there's going to be a new heightened sense of rejuvenation and excitement around football, because it does, and in some ways represent a return to normal, and I think So I anticipate that first tailgate to be pretty lit and pretty fired up. So hopefully y'all can come out there. I don't, I'll tell you that, and this is a true story, Ben. Last year I started picking out and I knew where all the tailgates were, but with the tailgating scene that I hear about and I'm looking forward to seeing this year, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep up with everybody where they're at and trying everything. I might be only hit one row and I can't all try everybody's food because I'll be full by the time the game comes around. So those are some personal problems I got to work through on a lighter note. But listen, I can't tell any people I've heard from that are just fired up about the fall. So,
Jared Benko, Georgia Southern Athletic Director, joining us here on 3 and Out. Now, Jared, obviously coming up in about 2 weeks, the whole name, image, likeness in our state goes into effect.
Yeah.
What role, if any, do you guys have in that?
Yeah, so right now, there's a couple things going on. So obviously, there's a push for a federal legislation that would proceed and overarching over the state. Obviously, our state of Georgia, we have a law going into effect, legislation July 1. And so really, Kevin, for our role is really to continue to help educate our student athletes. I think that with some of the top 2%, or Trevor Lawrence's types of the world, is some of the Power 5 institutions, they're going to be a whole different subset in terms of these mega national deals. I think what you'll see a lot of are local merchants, and really it's going to be a lot of digital advertising. And so really for us, it's continuing to, we already do financial literacy and a lot of things associated with that. We'll expand that curriculum, even for incoming freshmen. But I think there's some feeling of we still don't know all the full effect. Like I saw an article in the AJC this weekend about a merchant up in Athens, around Atlanta area, that was going to already identified 5 or 6 UGA student athletes. And so part of that is we haven't had anybody, at least only I know of, that has been approached about a potential sponsorship deal. But I know it's coming. And so part of that is trying to create a framework where we can help the student athlete understand what the implications are of their decision, or their tax consequences, or their financial, consequences, and try to help educate them, because we're all kind of going through this the first time.
To that end, how do you kind of prepare for the unknown? Like you said, we have a state law, but there could be an NCAA change. There could be a federal law. When you're in, the position you are, how do you sort of move forward while also understanding and I guess anticipating further change and further developments?
Well, a couple of ways. One, you always have to prepare for the unimaginable. I think you have to prepare yourself for, just like last year, you have to be on the fly. You have to obviously have long-term plans that, ultimately last year is a great example where our core of our guiding principles and who we are don't change, but you might not be as comfortable with your operational plan because things can turn on a dime, right? We picked up UMass like a couple of days out. So, last year was an outlier. And with this, it brings similar challenges, but different. And so, we're set up to really continue to help our student athletes, which is always our number one priority. And I tell our student athletes, hey, my top priority is your health and wellness. Number one. Doesn't matter what happens any year. But in this case, I think for us, a lot of schools are waiting to see what happens at a federal standpoint, because we know our state laws and legislation. But I think also too, if there's some new things that from a federal standpoint come into play, then how do we interject those, interact those? And my anticipation, a lot of those will be similar. There's more similarities and differences. But I think you're going to have to just be flexible and with your programming, be flexible what you do, because what I found out last year, a lot of us found last year, is you can't be too rigid in your approach, because if you are, you're not going to be flexible to adjust to changes. Because I'm telling you, the next 6 months to a year, there potentially is introducing more change in college athletics than in the last 30, 40 years. And so, as with change, you have to be flexible. You have to be obviously considerate of all parties, but we're prepared for that. It's not always knowing that blueprint we all would like, and we're just going to have to be okay with that. So.
Jared Benko, athletic director at Georgia Southern. And again, along those lines, when you talk about that, you said you didn't know of any student athletes at this point who had been approached, but it's going to happen. And again, I think most people think football, but with social media and all that, it could be softball, soccer, whoever. Yeah. How do you kind of, and it may not be your responsibility, I don't know, how do you kind of keep track of what your student athletes are doing? Because that's a lot of potential individual side gigs, so to speak, that are going on throughout your athletic department.
Yeah, so there's obviously part of the federal legislation. The NCAA's looked at a third-party clearinghouse. I mean, there's different third-party companies as well that can potentially help us with that. So I think part of that is just trying not to put the cart for the horse and figure out where we're going to be at. Because there's like, I think it's on an article, like 100 plus companies are in this space. Most companies, Kevin, are really, there's two ways, right? There's a compliance education piece and there's a marketplace piece. Those are the way things at a very high level are kind of allocated. And so really for us, is trying to figure out, as a Sunbelt institution, do we go in as an overall conference and then have shared costs, and we're all kind of singing from the same hymnal sheet from a resource standpoint. And so this space is changing so quickly. And so we're not, we know all our options, but we're not going to do anything until we know for sure federal legislation set, or if not, and then kind of what that is. And so we kind of got a couple different scenarios. And so part of that is the monitoring piece. You're right. I mean, part of it's going to be, is there going to be a self-reporting component to that from a federal statute? If not, is it going to be something obviously through our internal department we're going to do? So it's a lot of checks and balances will have to be. But again, it kind of goes back to education. And that's what, you're right. I want our student athletes to benefit to the best of their abilities, but with the right framework. And that's what our goal is to put them in a position to where people don't take advantage of them and put them in a position that's most favorable for them.
We got about 2 minutes. Go ahead, BJ, real quick.
I was going to say, when you think about amateurism kind of changing some, do you anticipate more change on the horizon when you think about some of what we've seen, or is that kind of impossible to know, sort of given where we are?
Yeah, it's probably impossible. I mean, I think this is obviously pretty seismic in terms of change, but it's like they'll say, you never say never. You just can't ever tell. But I hope that at the end of the day, obviously, the student athlete model stays the same. And obviously there's some low hanging fruit with this legislation. And I hope that's where a lot of us centered around. So.
Jared Benko, our guest here on 3 and Out, Georgia Southern Athletic Director. Jared, we really appreciate your time. I know you're getting excited about getting back to just the regular role of being athletic director and football tailgate. Maybe you should just host your own tailgate and, as best you can, break out the grill and whip something up for everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tell you, that is something at times I'm envious on game days about. People have the great cookouts and stuff. But I will tell you, our cookout we're going to have for the spring game got moved to the fan day in August. So there's no excuse. Kevin and BJ and Ben already hopped off. I guess he was hungry. But it's mid-August. I'm going to get you the date. So I'm giving you like a 2-month heads up notice about coming up to Statesboro, all right?
Hey, that sounds great, man. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much for hopping on with us. I know it's a busy time, even in the off season. Thanks so much.
All right, thank y'all. Hail Southern GATA.
Appreciate it. Jared Benko joining us here on 3 and Out, and again, always appreciate him coming on his candid nature. BJ, we got about 20 seconds, but certainly between name, image, likeness, the playoff expansion, how that affects a lot there on their plate here.
Yeah, great perspective. Great perspective from Georgia Southern's athletic director. So always appreciate his time. And yeah, looking forward to some fall Saturdays for sure.
Hey, we've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll play a little Name That Team in the final hour. Get you ready for Braves and Red Sox as well. And just how long has this playoff talks been in the works? Some interesting insight into that. We'll get to that next. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com.
turn Kevin's mic on and we'll let you audition. That's what we're doing. Also, we can turn the fan down.
That's Christian talking.
Yep.
Keep talking. Don't say anything. Just let it run for.
Is the board cold? It's coming through Devin.
Welcome back. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett. Ben will hopefully be back here with us shortly, having some technical difficulties there as well. But plenty to get to this hour. We'll do a little edition of Name That Team coming up here in the final hour of the show as well. But great talking with Jared Binko, Georgia Southern Athletic Director, certainly about the 12-team playoff, name, image, likeness, and more. But he even mentioned, hey, this thing's been going on for years. And we just had Ross Dellinger on yesterday, and he put a story out today on just how long and how covert this thing has been going on, trying to get to a 12-team playoff format, BJ. And it's like, in today's day and age, like political news, anything, nobody can keep a secret, yet 4 men were able to travel around the country, meet in hotels, and discuss maybe one of the biggest financial ramification type things in college athletics to throw together the playoff. and ultimately say, hey, we're going to suggest a 12 team after coming up with like even odd number stuff like 7, 19 formats, 24 team formats to ultimately come up with this. Truly amazing that 4 men were able to keep their mouths shut. Social media wasn't able to find out and posted everywhere that this was happening.
Yeah, another great piece by Ross. But yeah, you think about, I mean, I've been amazed at just from my perspective, watching it kind of go from being what we thought was sort of maybe some fan speculation to all of a sudden, okay, this may really happen, to it looks like it is going to happen. You know, it feels like it's been a very sudden and quick transformation. It almost kind of seems surreal in some respects, Kevin, when you think about Division I FBS college football having a 12-team playoff. Like, this has come about, at least in terms of our knowledge of it, so quickly that it almost seems like it's make-believe, or it almost seems like it's 15, 20 years away. And we are talking about the very distinct possibility that we have a 12-team playoff in college football in a couple of years at the FBS level. And remember, as recently as 2013, we had just the old system. You had 2 teams playing for a national championship. So, I mean, I think about a lot of things. I think about, you know, you being at media days, asking everybody, when is this thing expanded? I mean, I think about all of our assumptions we made about, oh, well, there's no chance anything will ever happen until the current media contract comes up for renegotiation. This has been extraordinary. And the fact that you had, you know, some decision makers and, you know, conference commissioners and school presidents kind of do this without anybody being able to pick up on it. And, you know, some of the stories in Ross's article, really amazing about, you know, people getting recognized at airports, say, hey, what are you doing here? Oh, nothing. You know, it's incredible. But the fact that this has happened and seemingly happened so fast is not an accurate reality as compared to what actually happened, with people meeting for over a year and a half, you know, discussing, like you said, I believe in the story, it said everything was weighed from a replication of the FCS model, which is, for folks who don't know, that is 24 teams making the postseason tournament. I believe there's one reference in the story to at least the initial consideration of a 12-team playoff being turned down. Like, hey, we don't like that. And then, you know, the more scenarios that were discussed, again, uber privately, uber secretly, the more you looked at it, that became the kind of commonality, and everybody had to both think about their own perspectives in terms of the decision makers, what their roles were, the schools, the conferences they were with, and think about college football at large. And compromises had to be made, again, secret meetings, and, you know, just all kind of possible theoretical scenarios. It's absolutely amazing to think about, and it feels like it just suddenly happened. Snap your fingers. But this is something that has been going on behind the scenes for some time.
Well, BJ, as we all talked about it, we used to say, look, I was thinking expansion would happen, but expansion would only happen because the Power 5 needs were not met, right? I mean, you had 4 slots and 5 power conferences who all want what? They don't care about winning the national championship. I mean, I'm not going to say they don't. The SEC certainly does. Most of them, it's nice to win the national championship, but they want what? They want that check. They want the money from being in the playoff. And I said, you're not going to have 5 power conferences agree to 4 spots, and one of the Power 5 conferences doesn't get a cut of the money because they didn't make it. And that was part of the deal. And then Notre Dame got in. I was like, so now 2 conferences aren't going to get a cut? That there's only so long they were going to go with that. And I'm actually surprised, BJ, if you read Ross's article, not to give the whole thing away, but, you know, Jack Swarbrick there at Notre Dame. Wow. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that has a chance to play the Notre Dame card and do it. Basically, in the article came out and said, look, I agree. We're not in a conference. We don't play the extra conference championship game. So we just won't ever get the auto bid, which means what? Can't get a bye. You will never get a bye under this current system unless it's kind of amended there. And Notre Dame, I don't think, has ever said anything as such. Now, do they know there's a great possibility they get in anyways? Sure. Do they know that even if they don't get a bye, if they're supposedly the number 2 team in the country and they're the number 6 seed, they're probably going to win through? Sure. But just to make that concession off the top of, look, we realize you don't need the auto bid, which means we won't have a bye ever in the college football playoff, is really quite remarkable.
I agree. Yeah, really remarkable. And to read and hear about some of the behind the scenes developments and some of the perspectives, both individually and collectively, really incredible. And to me, I don't know if I'm alone in this. I mean, I want to go back to what I said a minute ago, because, we all are kind of consumed by so much college football news, and you have the name, image, likeness stuff. I mean, Kevin, college football is going to have a 12-team playoff at the FBS level. I mean, I know there's a lot of news, but it's like that is stunning, because, again, to go back to it, in 2013, which was not that long ago, you had just a regular 2-team. I think Florida State and Auburn played in the last 2-team national championship. And then you had this 4-team college football playoff that was groundbreaking and innovative and controversial in some respects. Remember, a lot of people, when we heard about the college football playoff, were asking the same questions we're asking now. Okay, how are there 4 slots and 5 Power 5 conferences? How are you going to do the at-large thing? Is the SEC going to get 2 bids every year? What are the logistics going to look like? And just as we're kind of, I don't want to say getting comfortable with, but getting used to that 4-team playoff, it's an expansion to 12. And to go back to conversations that me and you and Ben and everybody have had, I always thought it was going to be 8. I thought you were going to see a natural kind of expansion from 4 to 8, where you look at it and in theory, at least an 18 playoff, you could have the Power 5 conference champions and an automatic qualifier potentially from a G5 league or the highest ranked G5 team, and then a couple of at-large spots. But it seems like the more you read about this, the motivation behind the expansion to 12, which to me was a big surprise, is it was sort of a hybrid of multiple perspectives, like you mentioned, because when you've thought about college football playoff expansion, you've had kind of a couple of different sides to it. Well, you've had the folks who reference the UCFs and the Boise States and the Memphises and the Cincinnatis who said, well, listen, if we're going to expand, we have to do it to account for all the leagues and all the teams that are in the FBS, right? You've been saying that for years. I've been saying it for years. And then you've also had people, who are fans of SEC schools or Big Ten schools or whatever, who have said, well, listen, if we're being honest, our conferences are deeper, are better than other leagues. We have to have multiple at-large bids to make sure that you don't have, for example, Georgia go 12-0, make the SEC championship, lose to Alabama, not win the SEC, and then not get in. Or, Florida go 11-2 with 4 wins over ranked teams, but not get in. And I think what's neat to think about, and you kind of mentioned it, is this 12-team format, which wasn't heavily discussed, even the possibility of it in the media from my experiences, accounts for both of those perspectives. You've now created a hybrid model where there is clear entry, at least theoretically, for G5 schools, but you also are going to reward the quote power conferences with potential home games, with higher seating, with at-large bids. I believe it's been explained a couple of times, Kevin, that if you would have had this model in place last year, 4 SEC teams would have made the tournament. So it's a neat hybrid and it's a neat model, and it's incredible to think about how this all happened from our perspective so quickly.
Yeah, I you are right. I think the biggest surprise outside of when you see Ross's article, the fact that they basically kept it quiet is, I mean, we have had countless experts who follow this stuff on the show. I don't think we ever had one, not one, come on and say, yeah, I think they're going to triple the amount of teams that get into postseason. I mean, we've heard everything from 8, but I think 8's a stretch. Maybe they'll throw 2 more out there and 6 and some buys. Like, nobody was saying 12. Like, certainly nobody that we've ever talked to on the record, on the show, has ever said 12. Like, that's a 12 possibility. Maybe you got there at some point, but they're like, it's going to be so far ridiculous down the road. It's not even going to matter. Let's just live with 4, and it probably will go 6 or 8 when they get to it. But from 4 to 12, that is a leap I don't think a lot of people saw coming in regards to making this playoff expandable and putting together a new format.
and that's why I say it feels so surreal, because normally when you have, something significant happen in sports, college football or this or that, it's okay. I have a pretty good idea of what's coming, right? Like I think if it would have gone to 8, most of us would have nodded our head and gone, okay, that's what we expected. This doesn't seem real. And to go back to something that I've said all week, we keep talking about kind of casually, right? These changes, like, okay, are we going to change the way we interpret non-conference scheduling? We're going to change the way we compare and contrast resumes. We're no longer going to be so beholden to records, right? Like, it's no longer going to be all the 12-0 teams, all the 11-1 teams. And I keep asking, are we ready for that? And part of the reason I keep asking that is because it feels theoretical. It feels like it's something that, right, Kevin? It's like a show meeting. I mean, it's like we're having a show meeting going, all right, today's a slow news day. Let's talk about a college football playoff that randomly would be 12 teams and how you would make that work. And it's like, we don't realize that we are literally a couple of seasons out from that being a reality. I mean, is it going to, how big is the change going to be in your mind?
I mean, pretty significant, obviously, because teams that now feel like they don't have a chance. And I don't mean just, the G5 schools, but I would imagine there's schools like, I don't know, they would have to have a tremendous turnaround, but maybe I'm trying to think of like an NC State or a Nebraska or something. Right now, they'd be like, listen, not only would we have to beat top 4 right now, we would also have to beat perception. And people go, oh, that's not real. I've had this discussion many times, even about the 14 playoff, where I said, what if Duke went 12-0? Everybody's like, oh, if they went 12-0, they would be in a playoff. I'm not so sure that they wouldn't come up with reasons as to why the ACC was incredibly bad that year. That's why Duke was 12-0. Vanderbilt only because they're in the SEC, but under other circumstances, I think if they were 11-1, you'd be coming up with reasons to not put them in there. And I think there's a lot of schools that feel like, we're all kind of playing this charade of we can play for a national championship, when in reality, unless you are one of those kind of known commodities, you are fighting an uphill battle. I mean, heck, one of the first iterations of this, you had Baylor and TCU, which in the grand scheme of college football, who are Baylor and TCU? And what happened? They were 4, then they were 5 in the last poll. What happened? Nothing. Why did they move down? Well, I mean, they didn't play the conference championship game, so we moved them down a spot. And everybody just kind of said,
but Kevin, let me ask you this, because this is something I've thought about, and I'm not saying it's necessarily likely to happen, but, we've talked about this with the NCAA basketball tournament. Let's say we get the 12-team playoff in 2023, and Cincinnati wins the national championship. Are people going to like that, or will the response immediately be, well, this devalues, this and that? Are people going to like that?
It doesn't matter what people like necessarily. I know it does in terms of rating, but people will still watch it. It's a national championship. It's the playoff. And again, I think in every situation, more teams in some situation is a good thing. And again, if you broaden the pool of the only people that say that are people that want to corner the market on championships. Cincinnati winning means what? Dang it. That means Auburn and Georgia have to beat one more team to get a national championship. When you want to corner the market like Alabama, of course you would come out and say, we probably don't need more than 4 teams. Why? Well, because we're one of the 4 that are always there. Why would we want to open it up? I think from a competitive standpoint, it makes more people interested. And again, year 1, might you say, Cincinnati winning it would be kind of but do we say that about, was anybody saying Gonzaga in the national championship this year was bad? No. Why? Because Gonzaga has consistently done it and proven they can play with people and deserve a chance to be there. I think the same can happen with college football programs. You may scoff at App State, but if App State is in the playoffs 4 or 5 times in a decade, not even saying they have to win it, you'll say, you know what? That team's probably pretty good. And if they win it, there you go. So I think initially you might see some of that, but as it goes along, I think some of that goes away. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out, including a rousing game of Name That Team. When we return, it's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on this Wednesday afternoon. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett. We are hoping to get Ben back. Had some technical difficulties on his end here on the show. But in the interim, BJ, we have, or somebody decided to put our knowledge to the test and have us play a little game called Name That Team here on this Wednesday afternoon. So without further ado, Cody, if you are ready, we will play Name That Team.
Bikes. Yeah. I'm here, guys. I'm here. Okay. Football. Your favorite.
I might as well
there,
not
yeah,
even
I know.
answer
This
then.
is like, this is unfair because you got a
Go
guy
ahead.
in here.
No,
who's-
just do the questions.
Okay. I do love how he sent it to me, and it's like super, like, so I can pronounce the names, and I'm still gonna mess this up. So, Christian
If you can say it wrong, I probably won't know.
Benteke. Christian Benteke. There you
Okay.
go.
Oh, we're supposed to name the team?
Yes.
Christian said a
No
country in
way.
Europe.
Name that team. You're supposed to name the team.
Do you have an idea, BJ?
I do not know. No.
Wait, are they all teaming up?
No, we're supposed Denmark.
No.
Was that right? No.
No,
that's a
it's incorrect.
Portugal.
Nope. Belgium.
Off to a rip-roaring start. Football, not football Americano. Name that team.
Next one.
This is going to be a disaster. Go ahead.
Next one. David Alaba.
Spain.
Wrong.
Great Britain.
Wrong. Austria.
Of course. That was my 17th guess. I think it's a race to 1 here, BJ, and I think you're going to be the one that gets it. So keep going, Cody.
Next one. Ivan Perisic.
France? I don't know.
Wrong. It's gonna be a lot of that. I feel like he's just doing this just to be a butthole. Dude.
Yeah, he's doing it.
Belgium.
Belgium?
Wrong.
He's doing it because some tournaments happening in Europe right now, and I guess we're doing
Yeah,
name
the
that
Euro. Yeah, the Euro Championships happening right now.
Croatia. It's what he was.
Croatia. Okay.
Declan Rice.
England. I'm just gonna keep.
Oh, my man got it.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, he's a good player. Yeah.
It is. Yep. England.
Yeah, I love Declan.
Yep. 1 for Kevin. The soccer fans losing. Olivier.
Kevin, this will be your first win ever, and name that team.
It will be in a subject I literally have zero knowledge about. Go ahead.
Olivier Giroud.
France, Giroud. Yeah.
Woo, all right. 1-1.
Oh no! Now my run has come to an end.
Oh, he's going to go on a run now. I already know it. Manuel Locatelli.
Italy.
Oh, look at him. Locatelli. Hey, Italy.
I'm just guessing. I mean, that's fine.
Italy. It's Kevin 1. I mean 2. BJ 1. My bad. Okay. Jorginho Wijnaldum. Jorginho Wijnaldum. It's insane how like Christian knows how to pronounce these names.
You might as well just let me guess first, and you can make fun of me. Turkey.
No.
I'm just trying to think of countries we haven't named yet. So
Is it England?
No, and I'm pretty sure Turkey is not a part of Europe. Just want to let you know that. Netherlands. Yeah, Turkey's not a part of Europe. Maybe like a smidgen of like Constantinople, but besides that, no. All right, next one. Darko Cherlinov. This is the easy one.
it is
Easy,
Okay.
yeah. So easy.
Yeah, you're talking about great player. I just
Portugal. Is that
No,
No, I don't know.
that doesn't sound like a Portuguese name.
I don't know. I mean, BJ tells me all the time about
I mean, Italy? I don't know,
national
Italy?
team players.
No, not Italy. North Macedonia. Don't you know? You know, that's where Alexander the Great's from. Everybody knows that.
I thought it was
God,
East
geez.
Macedonia.
Whatever. Robert Lewandowski. Robert
Poland.
Lewandowski.
Poland.
Poland. 2-2. Right now, tied up with 2 questions left.
It's amazing that I got 2 right.
Okay.
Name that team has never been more riveting than it has been right now.
Rafael Goriao.
Portugal.
Oh, now that's a Portuguese name right there.
Is it? Is
3-2. We got 1 question left.
Kevin, you're going to beat me in a soccer contest. That's amazing.
I mean, this is literally like I'm throwing darts against the wall and I'm beating you.
Mario Fernandez.
Is it Russia?
Whoa, tied up.
Is that really?
Russia, it is. We got a tiebreaker right here.
Yeah, I know the club teams for a lot of these. Yeah.
There's a tiebreaker.
There's a
question?
tiebreaker
Oh, boy.
question right here. Aaron Ramsey.
Is it Wales?
Whoa, my man, coming down. Wales it is.
Of course,
BJ's better than Kevin.
I will gladly accept
Holy
defeat
smokes.
in that name that team. That was
Man.
That was terrible. I got 3
Some great
points on-
players, man. Some of the best players in the world.
I got 3 points on sheer luck. It's no skill at all, and that's maybe how name that team should go most of the time.
At
Just-
least you got a chance.
just
you know?
guessing. I got a chance. All I'm trying
You
to
did.
hear is the last name, and like maybe I'll have a prayer.
You
But,
were like the Coastal Carolina of the 12-team bracket. You were there, dude.
like when you said Mario Fernandez, like Russia was not even remotely on my radar. For
Well, I've been watching. See, I've been watching a good bit of the matches. Some of the games start at 3, so I've only been able to get with Christian watch during the commercial breaks. So,
I thought you were going to say you've been watching instead of paying attention to the show.
No, I don't. Okay, y'all have TVs in y'all's offices. I don't.
It's all good, man. That's name that team. I gladly and I don't even great no good. I'm glad I didn't win. Never been happier to not win. Name that team. Congratulations, BJ Bennett. It's 3 and out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, glad you are with us here on the show. Big game 5 coming up tonight. Hawks and 76ers, BJ, and a chance for the Hawks to shock the world thing and win on the road tonight in game number 5 and take advantage or take back control of this series.
And winning on the road is tough, and Atlanta's done it. You know, it's been one of the keys to success here in the postseason, and I think even more so than at home, defensive play. I mean, you got to start it on that side, and it seems like Atlanta has either won or the few times they've lost, it's been because the defensive play, especially late in the game, has not been great. But that's how you set the tone. That's how you get it going. And much like in football, when you talk about getting on and off the field quick. Defense can turn into offense immediately. And I think Atlanta's sometimes at its best in transition, right? When you can force a bad shot, you get a rebound, maybe a long rebound where you're already off and running. And then that's where Atlanta is almost impossible to stop. When you have Trae Young in the open floor, when you have, shooters running to their spots on the wings, and then it's Trae one-on-one, and he can either attack the basket or kick the ball out to the perimeter for the three-point shot. I think if this game is more of a half-court game, that may be tough when you talk about Embiid and Harris and the size and the length of Philadelphia. But I think you can sometimes kind of force the issue offensively coming off of defensive stops, especially if you can force bad shots that are more likely to result in long rebounds where you're already kind of moving down the floor. So I think defense, and I know that I sound like a broken record. I know that's not creative that every time we talk about the Hawks on the radio, I talk about defense, but Cody was sending me some stats a couple of weeks ago. I mean, that's where this team changed, is on that end of the floor. You've always had shooters. You've always been good from three. You've always had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys capable of scoring double figures. But when they became a more effective defensive team, they started winning games. And even in the last game down the stretch, 38 points in the second half for Philadelphia? I don't think Embiid had a field goal. I think Simmons took one shot. And in the last couple of minutes, you were just elite. So I think it's got to start there. And, Philly's going to score. I mean, best case scenario, you're probably talking about a 100-95 type game. But when it matters, into quarters, fourth quarter, coming out of the break, you've got to be at your best defensively.
Yeah, and again, I think you don't want to get behind like they did in Game 4 and have to make it hard on yourself coming back. I think certainly the question of at what level is Joel Embiid going to be? I think obviously a lot of people say he is gutting it out here in the postseason. For the second half from the field, that obviously was a big factor. How much does he have left in the tank? I think certainly if you're the Hawks, you got to find out how much and try to push that and take advantage of him not being at 100% in this series. And again, try to put them aside as early as possible in this game. But again, put Embiid back on his heels, and obviously Ben Simmons, who was sitting the bench late in the game. I mean, this is a 76ers team that is less than 100% and at times hadn't had faith in some of their stars to go out there and get it done.
Yeah, and Embiid is one of those guys where if he's on and he's healthy, he's going to be close to unstoppable. There's no way to know kind of where he is, and you wish him the best. I mean, you want to face a team, you want everybody to be healthy, and certainly you don't want him dealing with anything. You feel bad for him, but I don't think you have any way of knowing what you're going to get out of Joel Embiid, and all you can worry about is yourself. And I think Atlanta's defensive goal of if Embiid is good, let's not design our entire scheme to stop him is probably the best way to go about it, because he's one of the 3 or 4 best players in the NBA. And you're not, I don't care if you double, I don't care if you switch. I don't care if you try to rotate your centers out to kind of stay fresh. You can't do much with Embiid. I think the key and a lot of what Embiid can do is going to depend on him. I mean, he did not make shots at the end of Game 4, but I think the key is limit Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, limit Milton, limit some of the other guys that are scorers, limit Harris. Some of the other guys that are really productive players for you that can be streaky scorers. That's how you have to win. And I think Embiid is just one of the best players in the league when he's healthy. When he's not, it's hard to know what to expect. But if you're Nate McMillan, I don't really know that you can do much about that because you can't control it. And I don't know that we know. I mean, I don't know that they know. What I'm getting at is, I mean, sometimes you have kind of a clear picture of what the health situation is of a player you might be going up against. I mean, Philly may not even know. This may be one of those things where he goes out and it's kind of see what you can do. And again, you hate that for him, but I don't think there's any way to prepare for kind of a prediction about Joel Embiid's status, because I think it's going to be one of those things where you're not going to know until the game starts.
Sure. And again, I will see if the Hawks are able to take advantage of that. I already won a game up in Philly in this series as well, try to take advantage of that series, try to go up 3-2 in this best of 7 and push towards the most improbable of Eastern Conference finals. BJ, if they're able to do that, I mean, this is I don't know where it would stack up in terms of runs if they were to get to the finals, but you talk about a team that was 14-20, was it 14-24, so 14-20, something like that, going nowhere fast in this, and could be 2 wins away from a conference finals. Not saying they're good, but that is a heck of a turnaround, the likes of which you don't see a lot of times in professional sports. I mean, this would be, I guess, the football equivalent of sitting there at like 4-8 in the National Football League and making an NFC championship game, where you just look dead in the water and all of a sudden you've managed to turn it around and come back in a big, big way.
It'd be absurd, man. I mean, when you think about where this team was, and by absurd, I mean incredible, remarkable, awesome. This is a testament to Coach McMillan, but also, you know, the players on the team, everybody with the organization. And I think Trae Young has been at the forefront. Obviously, that's not breaking news. And Ben mentioned it yesterday, though, and I think this is an important distinction. I think up until a couple of weeks ago, Kevin, a lot of people around the league and even people who follow the Hawks would say, yeah, Trae Young's a star. He's a star. Maybe he's not a superstar, but he's a star. I think now he's a superstar. I mean, you hit a game winner in the Garden. You win a deciding series winning game in the Garden. You beat New York. You have better production than Ben Simmons, for the most part in the series against Philly. You talk about the 30-point games up in New York. You talk about 18 assists the other night. Trae Young is a superstar. And it's interesting to think that he's undergone at least a change in how people perceive him in just a couple of weeks, but I think it's occurred. And I'm not saying he's LeBron James. No one's saying that. But if you want to say, I mean, how many superstars do you think there are, Kevin, in the NBA? I don't know, 15 maybe. I mean, I think Trae Young is in that group. And a month ago, I'm not sure that was the case. I don't necessarily I think he was close. I think he was a star. I mean, he's been in the All-Star game, but I think there's a difference in being a star and being a superstar. And you said it the other day. I mean, you think about the great players in sports history, they get it done in the playoffs. And no, we're not to a conference finals, much less the NBA finals. But for an organization that from the outside looking in had basically no expectations a couple of months ago, and nobody around the country was even thinking about the playoffs, for them to be where they are, it's been a superstar leading the way.
Yeah, it's been truly remarkable to watch this team play and continue to do it. And again, putting up a gallant effort, even if these next couple of games don't go their way. They've got a chance to take the lead, though, tonight, and we'll see if they do that up in Philly. We'll come back. We'll get you ready. Speaking of a team that needs a win, the Braves need one tonight. They've made some roster moves as well. We'll get set up for that. Braves and Red Sox, our pregame coverage coming up at 6:05. We'll get to that next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here with you on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Reminder, if you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com, or go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You go to our YouTube page, get a podcasted version of the show every day, and you can hear things like our conversation with Jared Binko, Georgia Southern AD. If you missed that earlier today, talking about name, image, likeness, 12-team playoff, and more that is coming around college athletics. I enjoyed a conversation with him earlier today. You can catch that there, our YouTube page, and more, getting a podcasted version of 3 and Out every day. We've got Braves and Red Sox coming up here in just a little bit. BJ, of course, last night, Tucker Davidson leaves with injury. Now you bring up Kyle Muller to take his spot, another one of the young arms or heralded arms in the minor leagues. Try to see what he can do. He's not pitching tonight, obviously, but to take that spot in the rotation. And the Braves, I think, more than anything else, just trying to find some consistency, of which they've been very consistent at being inconsistent, and that's about it.
Need to get a win. I know Boston's really good. I mean, you see that when you play them, but St. Louis coming up tomorrow, no off day. I don't think you go right into the series with St. Louis tomorrow. So you just got to get some wins. And, you know, I get very pessimistic, obviously, but you're still in a point in the season where you can turn it around, you can get hot, and in a couple of weeks kind of change the dynamic of where you are. And, you know, the Mets, I mean, give them credit. The Mets are playing great, but I think if you're Atlanta, you just got to take it one game at a time. And I think all of us get caught looking at the standings and, you know, playing the what if game, or what do you have to do, or what if the Mets win, or this and that. You just got to win. You just got to win. And I do think you were talking about confidence earlier in the show. I mean, I do think Atlanta's a team that doesn't have a ton of confidence right now. Seem to be maybe a little tense with in tight spots, you know, runners on base, or, you know, when the other team is, you know, has scoring opportunities. I think if you can get a win, maybe that turns into 2 or 3, and maybe 4 out of 6 or 5 out of 8, 7 out of 10, and then you're in a different spot. But Ian Anderson's been great. Ian Anderson has been fantastic. I know a couple of his recent starts, he hasn't been elite, but you're still talking about an ERA in the low 3s, a guy that is emerging as a frontline consistent starter. So I think you feel pretty good about tonight with him on the mound.
Certainly. And again, I think you better win with him, as you said, because it hasn't been so great with the other guys in the rotation. So again, the Red Sox, a solid baseball team. You'd like to come out of there with a win here in a 2-game series, not get swept in the short series. But again, you got to find that magic, whatever it is, BJ, because again, you scored 7-8 runs last night and you lose. You score 3 runs to the Phillies, 1 run the other day, and you lose in extra innings. You've been bad in every late and close scenario you can think of, and you got to figure out how to overcome some of that, because they've been so good for so long. And we pointed out earlier in the show, the Braves are now 0-10 when the game is tied in the 7th inning or later. 0-10 in a tie baseball game. You would think you would be able to just luck into 1 or 2. And that's just being, if you're an average or mediocre baseball team. The Braves are 0-10 in all of those games. And that is such a violent swing from how good they've been in those situations in years past. So maybe it's just, the karma of baseball coming around to get you a little bit, but you have to figure out a way to do it. And that's hard. I know a lot of heat being put on Brian Snitker from Braves fans about, why doesn't he do this? And why doesn't he do that? I mean, if you pay attention, he's trying, and that's been a criticism of mine of his, like, you go too much by the book, but he's tried guys. AJ Minter pitching well. You put him out there in the key spot, he fails. Will Smith had a bad start, started pitching better. You put him out there in a tight spot, he fails. Chris Martin comes back. You're like, hey, we get an arm we can depend on. He comes in, he fails. It's never the same guy 2 nights in a row, seemingly. The only thing consistent has been the one guy that people hate on the most, and that's Luke Jackson. Luke Jackson's the guy the fans jump on the most about being inconsistent. He's been the best pitcher the Braves have back there. But the same with the starting rotation. I mean, anytime there's been some kind of momentum, it just falls apart. Hey, Huascar Ynoa really starting to pitch well. Maybe this kid's got a little something. Punches a pinch, breaks his hand, he's out. You lose that kind of spark there in the 5th starter spot. Tucker Davidson comes in, looks pretty solid. He has forearm stiffness. He's going to be out for a little bit. So it's just seemingly been one thing after another. Drew Smyly just can't get out of a ball game without giving up runs. Charlie Morton has the one big inning problem. He pitches well for 4 of his 5-6 innings. 1 inning eats him up. Max Fried has been wildly there's been nothing I think that Brian Snitker can hang his hat on except Ronald Acuna Jr. Outside of that, what have you felt good about day in and day out with this baseball team that you feel like I know what I'm getting today?
Well, I mean, I think Ian Anderson maybe, and that's why I think you should be confident tonight. He's a guy that I think not only has been effective, but for the most part, you've been able to count on him even when he's at his worst to get you to 5, to get you to 6. So I think you feel pretty good tonight that you should get a quality start. I mean, I say this with all due respect, but you feel like you won't have to have the bullpen carry 5 innings. That would be great if Ian Anderson could get you, through 6 complete, and maybe you're only looking at 7, 8, 9, or get you through 7, and maybe you're only looking at 8 or 9. I think that would be a big key. I know offensively the Braves ultimately scored a lot of runs last night, but it seems like they're coming in catch-up mode late in games. I think it would really help just the whole energy of the team if you could get, a couple of runs early, 2, 3, 4, 5 runs early. Now, that did happen last night, but it happened for the Red Sox. And you saw the Braves were playing kind of in chase mode the rest of the game. And that's just a lot to deal with mentally. So hopefully the Braves can get some runs early tonight. I think Ian Anderson, you feel good about. I think we all kind of knew, and you hate that he's hurt, but you all kind of knew with Tucker Davidson that some sort of a market correction was coming just because he wasn't going to be a 1.5 ERA guy the whole year, basically as a rookie. But Ian Anderson, as good as you got right now, one of the better pitchers in the National League. Follow his lead, set the tone, relax, take some pitches. And Kevin, I don't know if you've seen this. Maybe I'm kind of seeing something that's not there, but I say, it seems like Atlanta's really up there trying to swing. Take some pitches, take some walks. I think taking some walks is okay when it's 3-0, when it's 3-1. So we'll see, but rooting for good things tonight.
And we'll see what the Braves can do, trying to salvage a split in the series before the Cardinals come to town. And of course, looks like Adam Wainwright going to get the start on Saturday night for St. Louis against the Braves. Appreciate Jared Binko joining us here on 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Also, Drew DeArmond from ESPN The Zone, Huntsville, Alabama, Tiger Insider, joined us. We talked some college football with him as well. Again, ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel if you missed any portion of the show today. Braves and the Red Sox, our coverage coming up in about 7 minutes. Here, this is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin